Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Pisgah podcast.
We are your hosts. I'm Mangler, and that is Drew, and you are listening to Pisgah. We're coming to you live from the pump track behind Industry 9.
Let's talk about news from the past week. We have, USA Cycling Collegiate Nationals went off in Durango, Colorado this past weekend.
Yep.
And the Brevard Tornadoes racking up some podium spots, taking third in the Omnium. Other regional schools, Lees McRae taking fifth in the Omnium, and Warren Wilson placing 16th. And worth noting is Lindsey Wilson College, coached by past guest Josh Patton, pulled fourth in the Omnium.
Yeah, one thing worth noting is that the race almost didn't happen. Purgatory Resort got dumped on with snow like 2 days before the race, so what do college kids do? They rally hard and they shoveled the entire race course so that they could have the race. Also, Purgatory is at around like 9,000 feet elevation, so kudos to all of our low elevation teams for showing up and just straight killing it.
Yeah, way to show up and get it done, especially with the adverse conditions. It would have been too easy for me to say, you know what, I'm going to put my feet up and sit by this warm fire.
Totally.
Yeah. And with that, collegiate mountain bike season transitions into collegiate cyclocross season now. So that, and with the resorts getting snow, it must officially be fall. The leaves are changing, and they're falling already also.
Yeah, man, I've already ran the leaf blower a couple of times up and down the driveway.
Yeah, me too, but I'm going to stop now because it's futile. I just got to wait till the sugar maple next door is completely bare before I crank mine back up.
Ooh, yeah. Well, the Forest Service gave us an update to Cat Gap access area shortly after our show went up last week. So per an email that was sent out, Davidson River Road, or Forest Road 475, is closed to vehicular traffic at Daniel Ridge Trailhead, but riders and hikers can pass beyond there, but please do not block access on Davidson River Road. Vehicles parked on the pavement can be ticketed. So riders and hikers can also pass through the hatchery parking lot as long as they stay outside of the orange barrier fencing and off of the parking lot. Also, the restrooms at the hatchery are closed, and the Forest Service wanted to emphasize being respectful to the hatchery crew. They are working hard to get the facility reopened after, Hurricane Fred came through and they pretty much lost everything there. So, yeah, just be cool about it. Just be on your merry little way.
Right. And for those users wanting to recreate in that zone, just know that the trails over there did take on some damage. Lots of bridges are gone, especially on Daniel and Cat Gap. There are a couple of slides on Daniel Ridge, Rocky Side, and also a fair bit of the trail washed out on Cat Gap as well.
Oh, yeah. And also with parking being limited, since the hatchery parking lot is closed, maybe a busy time during the weekend isn't an ideal time to visit that area, but, they do have plans to open the hatchery parking soon.
Right. Well, with the news out of the way, let's talk about the interview you had for this week. Western North Carolina has become an East Coast hub for the bike industry in the past decade, but there are a few people who have been chugging along with the business since well before that. Clint Spiegal is one of those people.
Yeah, I've known Clint for years, and it was awesome to sit down with him and kind of get some more history of how he and Industry 9 became so involved in the Western North Carolina bike industry here. So yeah, this is a great one. I'm really psyched on this one. So yeah, here is Clint Spiegal from Industry 9.
My name is Clint Spiegal. I own Industry 9. Avid rider. That's me.
It's about as good as it gets. We had talked about going to breakfast this morning, but then I come in and give you a warm Krispy Kreme donut. And you mentioned how that's not very helpful to fitness and diet and stuff. What are your thoughts on, diet and fitness at this point in your life?
I think the biggest thing that's in my mind, I clicked over at 51, is this idea that most people give up on youth early, and it doesn't have to be. I think my perception when I was in my 20s of who I would be at 51 wasn't even close, and I think that was culturally determined that there was an expectation of some feebleness when you get older. And as I've aged, I've realized that's not true, to a point, obviously. And so, a lot of work to go into it to, just really push yourself and do hard things. So, like, that's most of what I do. I don't try to follow a really serious diet, but I'd like to do a better job on that, but I have too much fun.
I think everyone would.
Yeah. I have too much fun. So, like I have opportunities like you bringing in donuts in the morning to have a donut, which I would normally refuse, but a million other episodes, put that back. But, then ride really hard and, do trail work really hard or whatever you might want to do. And you can keep it pretty reasonable. But, the purpose of it, though, is, stay youthful.
Right on.
And ride hard, so.
That's a good ethos to live by, stay youthful, as long as you can. Speaking of youth, where did you grow up at, and what was your childhood like?
Yeah, grew up here in Asheville. I don't think I ever viewed myself as like native to Asheville. My parents had moved here just a year or two before I was born. My earliest memories, growing up kind of in a farm situation. My dad had started the machine shop basically the same year I was born, and my dear mother was into horses, and I think my dad viewed horses as an extravagant hobby. Actually, my family was not really into hobbies. It was kind of work, and I had a really strong work ethic. So, able to indulge the horse hobby, they decided to make it into a horse business, and then I think that made them feel like they could justify the expenses that went into it and all that kind of stuff. So I grew up in that environment. I don't know how many millions of miles. I mean, it's an exaggeration, of course, of fences I built, painted, fields plowed, rocks picked up, horses and different animals taken care of. And then, obviously going into the shop, I was working with my dad at the shop at about 5 years old and doing a lot of that and was pretty serious about that. So my family had a really strong work ethic and probably a bit of disdain for hobbies. And so that's how I grew up, and I bought into that family ethos really strongly. But, I wanted to accomplish something. I wanted to make a mark somehow or the other, and, that was another part of the family belief was, focus on something really, really hard, and that's how I grew up. Now, I had a lot of fun too, so I'm not going to take that away, but it was probably not until I was about mid-30s, 36, 37, that I really started living, for real.
Wow. Okay.
But, sacrificed a lot of my life behind the cold walls of a factory, but learned a lot of stuff while doing it. So.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you started going into the machine shop with your dad when you were around 5.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of the age when most kids learn how to ride bikes.
Mm-hmm.
What about you? When did you discover bike riding?
I think I was riding bikes around fairly young. I can't even remember exactly. It wasn't a big part of my life. Let's put it that way. Like I wasn't a BMX kid growing up.
Okay.
I would occasionally ride a bike, and I remember that from early memories, but it wasn't a big part of my life.
When did you kind of discover bike riding, or most importantly, mountain biking?
That was largely when my kids were born. I think the best part of that story in my own life, it's like one of the most meaningful periods of my life, or moment of my life, I should say, was when I was probably about 29, and started noticing my physical health going down a decent amount, because of that. And, that was, really living a poor life. I went hard, but, like I'd be working till 2 a.m. all the time on some kind of machinery project or manufacturing project or something like that. And, it might be ordering a pizza in at midnight. And it was just a horrible lifestyle, and I was like, all right, I've got to start doing something. One of the things I started doing was kayaking around a lake, and then I had probably one of my most fortunate moments was hitting a river that I thought was going to be fairly calm, but it had rained hard the night before, and the river was actually quite a roller coaster, and I kind of got accidentally thrown into that, and I just loved it. Like it was for the first time in my life that I really felt this adrenaline rush, besides, maybe being a teenager and driving a car way, way, way too fast. My dad had a few nice cars like a Ferrari and a Lotus when I was a kid. I'm lucky I didn't kill myself doing that. But that put me into whitewater kayaking, and that was the first kind of really outdoor experience I had. And then that continued for about 4 or 5 years until my daughter was born. And then I was kind of like, wanted to spend more time with my daughter, and also didn't want to leave her an orphan. Had lots of people I knew in the whitewater kayaking world die each year. And
Yeah, it's crazy.
yeah, plenty of that. Fortunately, nobody really close, but a lot of people I knew or indirectly knew. And so I started biking, kind of as a more efficient way to get some exercise in and spend time with my daughter. And then my son was born, and I started mountain biking by honestly pulling him around in a little trailer and just going all through the forest. And that experience is probably what really drove me into the biking, because another rewind in the story, about 10 years previously, I had been working on a hub project with Cane Creek really, really hard that totally kicked my ass and was a failure. But each time I went out riding with the kids, I started thinking of ideas for, making a fast engagement hub. And that kind of fed on itself, so.
This is like late 20s?
No, I would have been working on the hub with Cane Creek early 20s, like probably 23.
Okay.
Now fast forward about 10 years, early 30s, 33.
Was this Cane Creek / Diacomp then?
Yeah, well, this was right when Diacomp had first changed to Cane Creek.
Okay.
And they had lost RockShox, and then they'd come to me to help develop a hub.
Okay.
And so that was my first experience. But when I started riding with my kids, I started thinking about these drive ideas, which then gave me some ideas, and I was excited about that. I'd go into the machine shop and make prototype ideas that I would do and try to go out and ride them. And that excitement built my riding. And then even some of my early prototypes I showed, got with some bike shops in the area and showed the owners and the mechanics, and they started riding it and getting excited about it. And then they would take me with them along on rides, and that built my ability. So it kind of built together, honestly. So it was a neat part of my life too.
Yeah,
so.
For sure. Like, that's an interesting way to get introduced to mountain biking. Is a lot of us start out bike riding, and then we basically figure out like some sort of a business idea to keep us in mountain biking.
Exactly.
And you kind of did the opposite. You had the business stuff. Like, how did the Cane Creek stuff happen?
Well, yeah, so that's that's how really you have to go back to that to really get my in my mind space as far as cycling was concerned, because initially started working with Diacomp because Diacomp was partners at the start with RockShox. So they were one of 3 entities. There's 2 individuals, Turner and Simon, and then Diacomp, which was a Japanese-owned company. They came together to form RockShox. Diacomp, which is the Cane Creek plant now, was in Asheville, and we basically just happened to be the biggest machine shop in the area. So one of our sales guys had gotten some leads from Diacom. This was when I was still in college, and when I was in college, I would come home in the weekends, and we even made some prototypes for RockShox initially. But right when I got out of college completely and started running the shop is when RockShox hit. And we about doubled the size of our machine shop over a couple year period of time because RockShox grew so much. And then, and I rode with those guys a little bit, but I would call it more like a promoting business relationships. I was not into cycling.
Almost like, some golf outings or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. But again, in my headspace at this point, I'm just ambitious as fuck and really trying to drive the business forward. And this was a great account, and I wanted to, make that account happy, and but I could care less about riding. As a matter of fact, I view it as a waste of time. I needed to get back and work. The work ethic and really being a workaholic was quite a bit off the charts at that point.
Oh wow, okay.
Unhealthy for sure. But again, because of my family ethics, I suppose I thought I was doing exactly what I needed to do. So we worked really hard with the RockShox stuff. Then that partnership melded down at that point, the two individuals took RockShox, moved it out to California. Diacomp was bought by a local investor and became Cane Creek. And Kirk, probably a few local investors, and became Cane Creek.
So what year range did the RockShox and Diacomp split happen?
My guess was it was pretty close to 93 or 94.
Yeah. It's funny that Diacomp, I never knew it was here in North Carolina.
Yeah.
Like, I ran their parts on my BMX bike, like, pretty much my entire life. Like, a Diacomp Tech 77 lever was, like, my brake lever of choice, and it still is a lot of people's.
Yeah.
So, and then their 990 brakes were kind of like,
Yeah, I don't remember, exactly how much they were manufacturing, but, there was the Diacomp plant in South Asheville, Cane Creek Road. I believe they were manufacturing stuff. When RockShox, when they partnered and were part of RockShox, I think that was pretty close to, how many years they'd started before we knew, but that was pretty close to 90.
okay.
And then they owned RockShox, and the split, I think, happened in 93, 94, if
Okay.
I remember correctly.
And so now Cane Creek doesn't have RockShox. They do have the headsets, and they're looking desperately for new product. And so I don't think they had money at that point because they spent so much buying the company. So they came to me and was like, if you'd like to work on a design, you could own the design and we'll market it and, go forward. So I didn't know anything really about cycling at all. So we would work on designs, and they'd have riders that they knew, and they would test it, and they would tell me like things that needed to be improved. Again, we worked about 2 years on that. I put a lot of money into it also, and then went into production, had some initial failures, put a halt on the project. I went back to the drawing board, and then Cane Creek decided to drop the project. And
Was that a huge crush to you?
yeah, it was a huge crush. But it was a twofold crush. One, when RockShox moved to California, we continued doing business with them for a year maybe, but then they found local suppliers. So at this point, we were hurt very, very badly by losing that business. I mean, we'd found new business and we were recovering. But then the loss of the hub project, or all the money that I invested in the hub project that didn't go anywhere, and when they pulled out of it, at that point I was like, I guess I'm done with the cycling world. And, so like totally out of it for 10 years. But, that was the initiation
Wow.
of the idea. And so when I started riding, I was primed. I'd had experience in the world. I knew how it could grow. And I'd obviously had all these ideas that were failed ideas, but still gave me a foundation
by that time on how to improve on those ideas.
I would say it mostly gave me an obsession by the time I started riding, because then now you have a real edge to you because you're passionate about riding. Back then I didn't have it, and so it was mechanical to me. Ambitious, and I wanted a new product. I think that was, anybody, our machine shop is contract manufacturing. Anybody in the contract manufacturing world knows that that's a difficult business, but if you can have your own product line where you could control what you're doing,
That's a different
then
story.
it's a different story. So, and that was always the goal. And so I wasn't passionate about cycling, but I thought it would be a good business to be in. Fast forward to 10 years later, as I'm doing the new designs, now I've got passion behind me, and I'm just, can't stop from thinking about the hub just about every moment of every day, especially when I'm riding.
Yeah.
And then, have the machine shop and you make the prototypes. And that made all the difference in the world. Now, I will also say I was a complete idiot to work on it. I was trying to run, I think, 5 companies at the same time at this point in my life. I had a robotics company, I had a high-end packaging machinery company, the machine shop, a high-end tactical knife company, and like I'm trying to do all these things, and I just couldn't get my mind off of a better way to make a hub. And then when I did that, we started thinking of better ways to make spokes. I came into the cycling or into riding through the manufacturing side of it versus vice versa. And that I'd say most people in the industry, they were either racers or, heavily involved in it from the the physical side, and then they moved into business. But I definitely came in from the other direction.
That's actually pretty cool though, to see how what brought you into it.
Yeah. And it had the side benefit of saving my life.
Yeah.
I was completely on a trajectory of being again, we'll just fast forward to what I thought I would be at 51. Not that I really wanted, but it was probably highly likely I was going to be overweight and on blood pressure medicine and in a miserable marriage and, all that other kind of stuff. And, the just coming at life from a whole different way of enjoying it for the sake of just the joy in life, changed a lot of things.
Yeah, so pretty much Anon and cycling kind of saved your life.
100% saved my life.
Yeah. You would go out on rides with these guys to test out product. Did bike riding come easy to you?
When I decided to get in shape, I started straightening my life out a little bit with the kayaking aspect, but that didn't really get you in physical condition. When I saw myself, I have this great picture from an old family outing when I was about 34 years old. I love showing it to people. I might have even shown it to you, but it does look like I'm about to die. It's a horrible picture. And beat down emotionally, has all of it going for it. And when I realized how bad a shape I was and how much I needed to change my life, which was multifaceted, it wasn't just getting in shape, but changing your life where you're not working around the clock and have the ability to do that. That was, having that thought process was huge. And I realized I need to do something, and like anything I do in my life, I do it hard. And so I really dove in there and it started out with, doing local rides with some of these buddies of mine that lived in my neighborhood that had kids around my age. They were 2-year-old kids, and we get up early in the morning and do a charge up the mountain. And for a couple weeks I'd do that and get to the top of the mountain, feel like puking, and there was a big, hard, short period of time where my body was so ill prepared for it.
You just basically shocked it.
Yeah, I just hit it as hard as I could possibly hit it. And so getting in physical condition came relatively fast, although I wouldn't say that I'm genetically have a great, cardio system, but good and average, or maybe a little better than average. And so I was able to get in shape. And then I started doing really long endurance things right away because I thought that was the only thing that I could really compete with. And not that I thought I would win by any means, but just be non-embarrassing performance. So, I started doing some century rides on road bikes. I started doing adventure races. So I did some tough stuff right away. And the adventure races, I do maybe 30-hour adventure races, which, those things are tough.
Talk to me more about what adventure races were you doing and what were those like?
So they were mostly around this area. We did a couple of races.
This was pre-Pin Bar and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, I probably did. When I first started cycling, the first thing that I got into was road riding for about a year. I did a bunch of centuries that brutalized me, and then in about a year into it, I decided that the next step of brutalizing myself, and most of it was just to get in shape as fast as I could, but also wanted to be a better rider and all that stuff. So I did ORAM one of the early years, and then I followed that up with a couple of years at Pin Bar. But in that same period of time, I did the adventure racing, which was again just a way to take it to the next level and do something a little harder. And multi-sport was fun to play around with. I think I did 3 in the Wilson Creek area, a couple out in just across the border into Tennessee, the Ocoee area and stuff like that. So
your first kind of bike races and stuff, you were already getting accustomed to knowing the forest pretty well in the region.
Yeah. The adventure races were really good to really discover a lot of new trails and stuff like that. That was fun.
Yeah.
The skill levels, they came slower. Started riding with better and better riders, and night riding was a big improvement for my ability. So whatever the case can be, I would say if I started riding really, really hard at 36, and we fast forward to 51, 15 years, I'm still stronger than I was at any other point in my life, besides high school. So, it's been a steady 15-year growth, and I wouldn't say I was a natural, everything, the abilities were, a lot of work, hard, but I was having fun doing it the whole time, so it wasn't really work. But, I'd say, I'm not a completely gifted athlete, so so it was fine.
Do you feel like you had to apply that hard work ethos that you were kind of raised with? Did you have to apply that to mountain biking?
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't even know if I'd categorize it as I had to apply it to it. That's just what I do to things.
Yeah.
You know, like I'm into something and I do it really, really, really hard. I have tons of energy. It obsesses me. And, so that's how I do things. You just have to put that energy into healthier avenues.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's what the big thing that I changed. My life at 34 is no different than my life at 51, except in this main way. I was staying up till 2 a.m. in a stress cave trying to get a robot out the door at 34. At 51, I'm up till 2 a.m. on a really sweet night ride, cooking out with my buddies afterwards.
That's a big
quite a bit healthier life. But the technical aspect of it, staying up doing your thing till 2 a.m. is, what I'm all about.
Yeah. So you've kind of grew up your whole life with this work hard ethic, and then once you started having fun on bikes, did that kind of change your perception on the fun work balance of things?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, when I started riding to begin with, I realized that I was badly out of balance. I mean, my health was going down. I was working all the time, and it was starting to show in my health. So I knew I needed to have a change. But, quite honestly, it started out with me just, having my ass kicked in business so hard so many times that I pretty much gave up on being a successful businessman. I was like, I need to find out how I'm going to enjoy myself. My identity was being a businessman.
Yeah.
And maybe more than a businessman, an inventor type businessman. It was always based around trying to design something and then making it. But that was my identity. And at one point, it was just, I need to find something else to bring joy into my life. So, kayaking started it out earlier, and then into mountain biking, and that was dramatically changing my life. I made the life changes, and I think the passion that I put into mountain biking made all the difference in the business world, and it worked for a change.
Yeah,
it certainly hadn't been. So,
and you think you had passion for those previous, ventures with inventorship and entrepreneurship, but it wasn't the same.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't reach into your soul as deep. It wasn't as joyful. It wasn't as, encompassing. I mean, it didn't make your body feel good. Yeah. And it's a huge difference.
Or hurt.
Yeah, well, hurt, but in that good way where you're getting healthier and feeling better about yourself, and just all that combined, made a difference. Yeah. Yes, I had a lot of passion, but the passion I had for that stuff was nothing compared to what I have now.
Building robots didn't give you type 2 fun.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, unless you want to call it type 2 fun. What is the definition of type 2 fun? Like when you're doing it, it's not all that fun, but in retrospect, it's awesome. Isn't that how it's defined?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. It was it added as much suffering as any mountain bike ride ever did. Usually the warm glow, good feelings of afterwards weren't there, because generally you'd be dealing with some, dick bean counter that was just unhappy with the job that you did, so nobody felt good about that.
No, not at all. You mentioned college. What'd you do for college?
My major was in computer science. I'd started out just because I knew I was wanted to be in the manufacturing business and take over my dad's business when I was in college. But not just take it over, but grow it, and the idea to develop new products. And so like you're doing that, engineering is what first comes to your mind. And I didn't really, I wasn't into engineering nearly as much. And then right about this time, computers, the personal computers, this was 87, I guess. We're starting to make more of a mark. We were using CAD systems for the machine shop for the first time, and some offline programming and stuff like that. So I first got turned on to the benefits of that, and so I decided to go into computer science, which oddly enough ended up working out pretty good, because one of my businesses was designing a line of robots for industrial automation, and I was able to program the operating systems for those things because of the degree. Now that business was ultimately It wasn't really a failure. I shut it down mainly because of Industry 9's growth and finally realizing I needed to focus. But it was a good background for machine building, which has helped us with a lot of custom stuff at even Industry 9. But probably one of the biggest things the computer science stuff allowed me to do is when Industry 9 was starting. And though I wasn't an upstart in terms of I had the machine shop as a base business, it was struggling very, very hard at that point. We were losing a lot of money. So we didn't have a lot of money to develop Industry 9, and doing all this customization was hard from a system standpoint. So I was able to program stuff to manage the spoke colors and the builds and stuff like that to get the company off the ground when we were having to bootstrap it. So, in computer science ended up working out pretty good for me.
Yeah.
But I would still say if I had to put on a scale of 1 to 100, or if you said all my knowledge was 100, I'd still say what I gained in college was like 1% of that. So I don't put much value. I mean, I value it. I don't make it a high percentage of the value. Most of it was just,
I mean, you grew up in a machine shop.
Figuring out how to do something. Yeah, it was the greatest thing for someone like me. My dad pretty much be like, there's a bunch of machine tool toys, figure them out, and that's how I learned, so.
Going into college, you knew that you wanted to kind of follow the career path and grow it from what your family or your dad was doing with Turnamics?
Yeah, it was my dad. So no other family member was in it, so I didn't really view it as much as a family business, but of course it was. But yeah, about 16, I had decided that I was going to follow that as a career path, and started our first company, which was the bar feed, Spiegal, when I was in college.
Okay.
So when I'd say our first alternate company, the first product line company.
Okay. I've heard from multiple different publications and stuff, different interviews with you. You named it Industry 9 because it was the 9th industry you've pretty much, started doing. At what point did you realize that Industry 9 was doing something that was going to last, that it was real?
I mean, each step has been a little bit bigger realization of that, but I would say, we spent 2 years doing prototypes and development, and then I think it was 2005 where we showed it the first Interbike, and we got a lot of attention, I think mostly because of the colors.
Yeah.
Actually, those early years we had to fight the perception that we were not just about colors, that we actually had, the technology was the better piece of it. But I guess that initial reaction made me feel like I had hope. Again, that's how I've started all my other businesses. Generally speaking, you develop a product, you go to a show,
show it off,
and you show it off, and like my robotic stuff. One of my proudest stories in terms of getting that robot built and showing it at a show as early as I did. But I'd still say it took about 2 years before I started getting any real interest or orders. Like I started quoting systems. Industry 9 was like right away, a lot of people were starting to talk to us, and though maybe the growth wasn't astronomical, it was
almost a quicker return on investment.
Yeah, just everything. I don't even know if I would call it the return on investment. We were digging out of a deep hole all across, and Industry 9 had a lot of money that had been associated with developing the product. But no, like regardless if it's paying its debt or the development cost or anything else like that, it just felt like it had life, and it went a lot of life. But you could definitely tell there was a big difference between the other 8, and I'd say the other 8, there was probably 3 that I would call pretty good successes, and then the rest were pretty significant failures, like hardly even getting off the ground. But so it felt different, but still. I'd been beaten down. You'd failed at basically most of the things that you'd done. It's hard to really expect it going really, really far. But,
that first showing was pretty good.
But it gave me hope, and, we kept chugging along and just got better and better each year. I mean, Industry 9 has been easy compared to everything else by many orders of magnitude.
Yeah,
in terms of the way you feel, the ass kicking, the customers that you're dealing with.
Yeah.
It's a lot better feeling kind of thing. But, probably inside of 2 years of Industry 9, I realized I needed to focus on Industry 9, and I went through a big shut down all the other companies.
Yeah.
I never declared bankruptcy, but, just like I've got to shut them down. And, I think part of it was not just what I thought would be the most economically successful. It was what I would enjoy life doing. And
that's
whether
when you're getting to that age, you start realizing, life enjoyment is pretty important.
Yeah, I mean, it should be at every age, but yeah, you get clouded in that. But yeah, so maybe 3 or 4 years into it, probably 4 or 5 years into it, I was like, wow, like this is keeping on going. This is looking pretty good,
Yeah.
And then, this year it's been our best. So, and,
You say that every year, so that's
yeah,
a good thing.
I know, seriously, it's crazy. That's going to change one of these days, but I'm enjoying it while it lasts.
Right on. How did you handle the expanding business? And that's, one thing, you've created this business, as a passion originally, as a passion to grow business, but then it turned into a passion from bike riding. And when you create a business yourself, you have like this fire and passion inside you to do whatever it takes to make it happen.
Yep.
And when you got to a point where you started to like bring people on specifically for Industry 9 reasons, to grow Industry 9, to develop Industry 9, how was it delegating tasks to other people to let go of things?
Well, that's never been too much of a problem of mine. I lead when I feel like I need to lead, and which, been plenty of times in my life, just being, maybe at any given task, the most capable one at it, and so, when you've been machining or manufacturing since you're 5 years old, chances are you're the most capable person in the room. I mean, just like you're probably going to be the most capable person on the bike path if you started BMXing at 5. And so, that's what I had for manufacturing, and so I would lead and direct or teach or whatever as a result of that. But if I didn't need to, and my the skill level of the people, or I had some good people doing it, then I didn't have to worry about that. And that was what was really, really special about Industry 9, is the people that it attracted right away. So there was a couple of guys. Fred Schultz owned Pro Bikes, and I was working with him on some of the first prototypes, and showing him the wheels, having him ride it, and he got excited about it to the point that when we decided to launch the company, he sold Pro Bikes and came to work with me at Industry 9, and he was one of the top, the first, couple people that were involved in it. Industry 9 started with this guy that worked for me as a machinist, John Kiffmeyer, and he was the guy that had the idea to make the spokes a million different colors, even fade the spokes, and which maybe is crazy from a inventory management business quote running standpoint, but it really gave us a big edge. So like his ideas that went into it were something new to me, like not maybe completely new. Like I was making one of my businesses, the tactical knife business, was a successful business, and we were 25% owners in that business, and the two brothers that own the other 75%, forced to sale. But I really enjoyed that company. I'm not a company seller myself. And I enjoyed it because we were making a really, really detailed, beautifully operating, but beautiful looking knife. And that's probably gave me more ideas for Industry 9 than anything about how you can make something really nice and really beautiful, and that people will, be willing to pay what it costs to build something like that. So having, somebody that comes into your shop and or these people that you're working with that are really passionate about these different ideas of how to make something or how to put something together worked out really great. And it wasn't like just having people along for the ride. It was people that really had these strong ideas. So in the early days of Industry 9, I had, 3 or 4 other companies that I was involved in. I tried to have people running each one of them, but Industry 9, this group of people, really drove it forward. Well, unfortunately, some of those early guys booked, I think partially because of the stress of starting the business. But they taught me a lot of things as far as what the bike industry was about, even marketing things that I hadn't spent a lot of time doing. So it's actually fairly easy for me, because I wasn't really very good at those things, to let those guys take that on. And then I was able to stay focused on the design and the manufacturing. And, as we were growing so fast, the manufacturing ended up being, pretty challenging, buying new equipment and stuff like that. So I was able to focus on that. And then, I've always had great people in, wheel builders, even sales guys, marketers, people that have come on that are so passionate about writing, that they've wanted to work at Industry 9. I also have the benefit of this company being located in Asheville, North Carolina, where there's a lot of people that want to live in Asheville, but not a lot of, really great jobs. So,
Exactly.
it was like from all around the country. I had people asking to come work for Industry 9 that wanted to live in Asheville and, provide them a good job to come to Asheville. And then, so it's been really easy. Those people have taken charge and done more and more, and it's been really easy to delegate.
That's
as far
good to
as
hear.
that's concerned. So,
I mean, 'cause that's kind of a challenge that I have at some points on some bigger projects that I work on is, does this person understand the importance of this scenario that we're going into and how it applies to dealing with the client and stuff like that?
yeah.
You're in this business because you had a passion for it that's shifted but still a passion. You're making bike riding more enjoyable, more fun in my eyes.
Thanks.
How do you keep that flame burning and going?
I like to make comparisons in anything in life to romantic type stuff. Like that's the thing that hits us in our heart the most, and what makes you attracted to your mate or have fun with or whatever. And you kind of say, well, it's just magic. You have it, you wake up with it, and it keeps going. But like, really, what does that mean? And I've been married, unfortunately. I'm on my third marriage, which is a very, very good one, and the previous ones were not. And and one of the things that I could say is, when I was younger, people would talk about, well, you've got to work hard. You've got to, like keeping a marriage strong is about working and working at what you need to do and all that kind of stuff. And I don't believe that. I haven't felt that with my marriage. A good, marriage that I feel is really, really working. I don't feel that with my business, a business that's really, really working. What keeps that energy alive is just living it and living it hard,
And I see you living it. Like
Yeah.
the group text is fired up on Monday about the night ride that's happening later in the week,
Yeah.
and like it's just full of stoke.
Yeah, and the night ride cannot be underestimated in terms of, the energy that gives me towards the business. It just makes every aspect of it fun and full of energy. And, when you're pushing yourself and doing these harder things, and even though you're just saying, this is just fun, just in heaps,
Yeah.
And it's the same way I go out on date night with my wife, Michelle. That's let's do something fun, and really get out there and live it. And it just keeps the stoke up, and
Yeah.
you enjoy every day, and that's how I do it. So
Hell yeah. What's a usual day like for you here? I mean, I've come in, seen you like hammering away at the computer on stuff, or I've come in, you're running around like crazy doing stuff, or you're talking shit with people, or you're, busy at the machine on the machine shop stuff. It seems like you're kind of all over the place, almost like a mad scientist here.
my primary skills, like I said earlier, are in design and manufacturing. So and I've got people that do everything else better than I do, so I kind of let them have at it, have input. I might even, throw out some marketing ideas here and there, but for the most part, that's a minimal piece of my day. The manufacturing side is, pretty intense. You've got, we've got 90 people here, I think, total. The machine shop is, about half of them. We have 100 CNC machines, bought, I think it was $1 million in new equipment last year. So, like, figuring out the equipment, figuring out new setups, new processes, that takes a good amount of time. But a lot of time is just, spent trying to think of a new idea. We don't really like to just release a idea that is a Me Too idea, like
You guys want to go beyond that,
Yeah.
do something really special.
Obviously the wheels fit that bill exactly. The stem was a good example of, we spent a lot of years trying to come up with a newer, fancier stem that had some new idea on how to clamp it. I was even working with like hydraulic type bladders and stuff like that. And, ultimately you test them, you try them, variations, manufacturability and stuff like that. And you decide they're bad ideas. So finally, after doing all that, we're like, stems really just work the best the way they've been mostly been done, but we can make one more beautiful.
Yeah.
And so, that's why we did it. And other products that we're doing that, can maybe be improved by beauty, we'll do it. But most of the time we're looking at an improvement in function that charges forward. And I spend a lot of time just thinking, daydreaming, playing around with different ideas too. And then there's just a myriad of just life stuff that happens in the bike world, and relationships with other people in the industry, and our own people, and keeping everybody connected and working together. It's easy when you get 90 people to have a company that maybe goes factional.
Yeah.
And making sure everybody realizes we're all on the same team is something else that I do daily. So.
Yeah. This past year, I know you've made it to a couple more events than what you usually do. How does this look going forward? Do you like going to events and visiting with people and doing that sort of thing?
Yeah, I do. And, I've noticed that I like it more now. I have two kids, and they're turning, or they just turned this year 17 and 19. So my daughter's in college, my son's a senior in high school, and they're still living with me. He's got his, is busy as his own life, and that's opened up a lot more free time for me.
Yeah.
Particularly in order to travel. I have a stepdaughter as well that's 9, but that's not nearly as intense of a parenting program. And so as I've been able to do that, I have traveled more. And I also am, it's very easy for me to leave the shop. A few years ago, I felt like if I left the shop for a 2-week period of time, it'd be a serious issue. And now I feel like I could leave the shop for a couple of months and it would be, everything would be running great, you know. And so that opens up the door. Now, a big piece of me is to still drive it forward and have a strong work ethic, to do new things. I think a lot of people get into, I've seen it with a lot of people in their early 50s. They finally developed a business that's pretty successful, and especially if they get a little notoriety from it as well, and it's easy to start enjoying that, know. And part of that is traveling. You go to different places and meet cool new people, because of what you've done, and it's fun. But still, primarily, I view my responsibility is inside the shop, coming up with new ideas, to make the company stronger and make sure it doesn't start regressing because, I decided to enjoy life way too much. I'm enjoying it already too much.
Yeah.
So, but at any rate, that's kind of my attitude as far as that's concerned. So yeah, traveling has definitely gone up, and well, here's one of the things I like to contrast between this business and the robotics business. I had to travel a lot with the robotics business also, and it would be in the middle of nowhere around the country because, that's where people like to put factories in low-cost labor areas, and those low-cost areas are low-cost because they're not really all that awesome to live in.
Yeah.
And now, in the mountain bike world, I get to travel to the most beautiful places and interact and ride bikes with some of the most fun people. So, it's fun to do some traveling for that, for sure.
I mean, that's what I do. So
Yeah, I mean, I hope you enjoy it.
Yeah. There's definitely times, but that's the key to, it's still work. It's, every job has its shitty parts. You need to find a way so that you can enjoy them.
Yeah.
And I think that's the key to being successful, which in my eyes, I look to you as an inspiration for some of those things because, every time I interact with you, you're stoked. You're psyched on doing stuff. I mean,
yeah. Well, I appreciate you saying that, and you're equally an inspiration because, again, you're always stoked, and I think that is the deal. When you can go around and know people that are just excited and they have that life in their eyes, it's really, really cool.
Yeah.
And I'm sure I've seen you. Like everybody knows who you are, so I'm sure part of the way you've made traveling enjoyable is absolutely every place you visit. There's somebody that's absolutely stoked to see you, and you're absolutely stoked to see them.
Oh, 100%.
I experience that every time I travel. That's a good feeling.
Yeah, I think I think it that's one of the things that kind of can make traveling addicting.
Yeah, I could definitely see that for sure.
What's it been like growing the company to where it is today? I mean, I remember coming in here when I first met you guys, and the shop was a lot smaller as far as like space you took up in this building. And I'm sure in some of your robotics industry stuff and college stuff, you've probably studied or taken part of some of the manufacturing processes and making things more efficient. Have you tried to kind of do that with Industry 9 how it is today and how it's grown?
I hate using the buzzwords constant improvement or whatever, but of course you do, you know, and you wake up every day and you try to make it a little bit better and a little bit more efficient. But there are human elements of that. And there are some things that you can do that, I guess, maybe the best way to do it is say to reduce the humanity of what you're doing. I think it's real important for us all to realize that we're all just one of 8 billion almost people on this planet. That this company, develops into a powerful bicycle wheel or hub manufacturing company in the whole scheme of things isn't particularly important. I have 90 people and I can help make their lives better. And I can take 90 people and I can make them dread every single day walking into work. And that seems pretty damn pointless. My goal is to make our lives better. And, if you can be more efficient and make some more money and pay your people more and have a healthier company and not have to worry about layoffs one day and just keeping everybody alive, new ideas, movement, growth, gives people that stoke, gives people that idea to, really feel like they're living as strongly as they can. And, so I think about it in those terms and, new machines, new way of making things, improved processes, certainly things that can improve the quality. One of the best things that I can do to my sales force and my warranty guys is to not allow them to have a customer that's disappointed. It feels like crap. Answer the phone call. I used to do this with my robotics business. I'd pick up a phone call and I dread every single time I'd pick up the phone call, and I dread what they would be saying to me, threatening to sue me because the project wasn't running. They wanted to lay off 20 people in my robotic system. If it wasn't finished, they wouldn't be able to lay off those people. And, it just feels like crap. And, your sales guys, if they have to, a new customer calls up and they're like, man, I rode this wheel and I already, broke a spoke, or my drive mechanism is creaking or something like that. Nobody wants to hear that. So, working really hard to keep your quality high makes, everybody that's on the phone and outfacing your customer to have a happier job. And, just like we're talking about traveling around the country and somebody seeing you, that has stoke, it's the same thing with these guys. They go out in the trail and they know you make a high quality product. They're riding with somebody else, someplace else in the country, and they're stoked to ride with you, because you're doing something that's they respect or, they just enjoy, and so it makes life better. So
you just touched on something that I was looking to bring up is robotics in this business. I know some of the big, larger wheel companies have a lot of robotic stuff. You started out with basically 4 dudes sitting around a wheel building table talking shit all day building wheels. You've expanded that, but you've also brought in some robotic stuff. And I like how you've brought it in where, it still requires the human element to it. What was that decision like?
Well, the world's going to march forward, even in terms of machining hub shells and stuff like that. The number of people, if you were making a bicycle hub shell in 1910, you'd have a lot more people, a lot more time just making the hub shell that goes into it. Now I have a CNC machine that I have a robot that loads a slug of material in, it starts, and out comes the part. Still a lot of labor in terms of adjusting the machine, making sure it's set up, making sure it's running in process and all that kind of stuff. But, and there's more you can go. You can develop lights out factories where you have really, low amounts of people and high investment in automation. Is not just robotics, but all kinds of different automations. So, you're going to go out of business if you don't advance those things and try to get some of your labor out of the way. But, for the most part, my decisions have just been about quality, our Truin robot out there. When we bought that, it sped things up quite a bit, but it didn't true wheel as well as a human being could. It was close, but like there's still an extra quality that the human can put to it, and if that's the best way to do it, that's the way we're going to continue doing it. Now, I could also say I have the choice of investing, in more people or, into robotic systems that might get you past some of that labor. And, like I try to resist some of that. I do think one of my social responsibility is to provide decent jobs. So, yeah, it's always mitigated by that a little bit, but still I would have to say if we have an idea that can make something faster and better is a big key piece of that, then, we're going to pursue that. If it's close in terms of, like, oh, we can invest in $100,000 of machinery or $100,000 of people, I'm going to probably make the people decision, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, this past year has created quite the demand across the board industry-wise, pretty much every industry, especially bikes. How do you think Industry 9 has handled the increases of demand?
Well, I've been, really thrilled and, really proud of my entire staff in terms of how they handled it. I'll go a step, one of the biggest ones that I'm impressed with is my 76-year-old father. He has really hammered the machine shop to a new level, and, we're basically double the size across the board, and the most difficult thing to double is actually the machining aspect of it. But that was just a piece of it. Everybody else rose to the occasion and really got to a much higher level, and on top of it without a bunch of stress. Like there really hasn't been a lot of people working overtime, and there hasn't been a lot of the stress that's associated with that level of growth. It's everybody has worked together, and we've built a good team over the years that really it happened fairly easily.
What kind of supply chain issues have you been running into?
Almost none, and I think we're unique there. Most of our stuff comes from raw materials, and raw materials, and a lot of them are domestically sourced raw materials. So we've never really seen a big problem. Now we do buy bearings that we don't make ourselves, and our bearing supply has been flawless. And we do buy rims, carbon rims from We Are One in Canada, and those guys have been amazing, been responded. And then some of our aluminum rims are made in Taiwan by Fratelli, and they've taken care of us. I mean, admittedly, we could have maybe liked to have gotten a few more rims from them, but really it's been pretty minor, and any supply chain issues. And the vast majority of our business increase has been in hub shells itself, and hub shells itself have been zero supply chain issues. Just the only problem is us buying enough machines and hiring enough people and training the people fast enough to do it. But like I said, our machine shop output is basically double since the beginning of the pandemic. So, it's been a big jump and done well. Yeah.
How has workforce growth been?
I mean, extremely challenging, but fortunately, I think, being in the bike industry in Asheville, North Carolina, encourages a lot of people to want to do it, or if they needed to shift jobs, they could do it. It's been a challenge, but we've been able to pull it off okay.
Yeah, and obviously with the increase of demand, needing to increase the workforce, all while during the pandemic, how has it been, keeping the team safe here at Industry 9?
Well, I mean, that went surprisingly well. I was very nervous when winter hit last year, and expecting some factory shutdowns and more people getting it, and really very few people got it. We spread people out, mask use, when anybody was working in close proximity, stayed on top of exposures and testing and everything else. It handled itself, or it was handled well. This latest Delta surge has added to the challenges again, and we've had a couple cases there, but overall, it went way better than I thought or feared it could.
Wonderful.
And no serious illnesses yet. Everybody's recovered, and it doesn't seem like anybody's had any long lasting.
None of the COVID long haul BS.
Yeah. Nothing yet anyway.
Yeah. How do you see Industry 9 growing in the future? It's tough to say, but with how the mountain bike industry is today, the products you guys releasing, the stuff you're working on, what do you see as a potential future for you guys?
Well, I'm not the kind of person, and I don't think I have anyone working here that has this idea that, we want to become a 50 million in sales company in, X number of years, or, go public, or any of that kind of stuff. I mean, I actually distinctly don't want to do those things, but I am 100% convinced that there has to be growth. And so it's just, kind of like, let's see what we can do. We don't know. If we come up with an idea of a new bike product that's really, really huge, then we'll grow really, really, we'll probably grow a bunch as a result of it. We're not going to purposely slow down our growth, but we're also not going to just start developing, new products or whatever, certainly not.
You're not a company.
Outsource it to get more lower cost, I'm not going to outsource a hub to Asia to get a lower cost one or something like that. So
you guys don't seem like a company that just throws shit at the wall, see what sticks.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys put a lot of thought in everything, but then again, if you look back 30 years ago when you were working on that original hub project, you had no idea you would be in this position today.
So. No. And even when I did the, first launch Industry 9, the first couple of years, I wouldn't have, I thought it'd be just a, good little side business to, do. I didn't realize it'd go as big as it did. And so that's all of it surprising. And again, I wouldn't have expected that I would be as good of a rider as I am today. And that was a surprise. And I didn't have some goal, wasn't like I was going to be like, I'm going to start riding like Mangler, when I'm 60, because I'm going to still need another 10 years to even have a hope of that.
Nonsense.
But, I know that's not reachable, but I do know that just let's see what can happen. And that's mostly what we're doing. I wouldn't say we're, particularly goal-oriented, except there is that one underlying theory behind it. You're either going forward or you're going backwards. And the moment you lose sight of trying to drive the stuff forward, you'll start regressing. And, it's kind of like getting to be as good of a bike rider as you maybe want to be. If you decided to say, okay, well, I don't need to ride anymore. Well, we all know that we start gaining weight, we'd lose skills, we'd lose our cardiovascular capacity, and that's what I'm trying to do with the business, just make sure that doesn't happen.
Absolutely. What got you so psyched on night riding?
So I was invited to the first night ride. There was a group of people that were had started doing night rides from one of the bike shops. Actually, a guy who used to work for me, Than White, and he was probably the initiator of trying to pull together this group of people when he was, like I said, he was working at a local bike shop at this point. And he brought in some local guys. And, they'd do a loop at night, and they'd bring a grill, and they'd cook out, and, it was a lot of fun, and I'd never even known about it, but one of the guys invited me and to join one day. I think it was probably Than, I can't even remember. And then I met the guys that were doing this night riding, and just their attitude around it was just a fun way of riding. And so that kind of like reached out to me, and then it was just at that point I just went on some rides, and I thought they were really, really fun. And Industry 9 was growing at the time, so I had, some extra money to where I was like, hey, I can help make this night ride a little bit cooler. Like I'd bring a shuttle truck, or, then I started bringing food, and then there's more people that started showing up, and then I bought a new grill, and like we just kind of amped it up to the next level.
Yeah.
And then it's a group of people that did it, we're just like excited about amping it up, and then we amped it up again, and we amped it up again, and we amped it up again to where, and that spirit of just amping it up each time, was probably what did it. I keep coming back to, like being a BMX kid. I'm sure that's one of the things that I didn't have that experience, but amps it up. You get out there in a skate park or whatever with a bunch of your BMX buddies, and one person says, look at this trick I could do. And then you're like, well, I can do this trick. And, you just keep amping it up. That's what makes it amazing.
Yeah.
And that's what I fell into, as far as the night ride was concerned. So, and it just reached into a lot of what I was, like I said, I used to be a person that, just a lot of energy, stay up late at night. I like to work, so night riding gave me an opportunity to ride bikes more, work all day long and, ride during the night. But also the partying element of it really reached out too, like bike riding is a party in the woods. When do you party? You party at night. It's got more energy. It's got a coolness element to it. So,
and a lot of people, I think, almost look at night riding as a necessity for a way for them to ride during the winter or something. And I definitely think, the idea that you guys come at it with is it's a different type of riding, and it gives you a completely different experience on the trail, post-ride, pre-ride, like just all of it. It's a completely different experience, and I think it promotes a good, fun time.
Yeah, for sure.
How much time a week do you spend planning for that week's night ride?
Planning for it?
Yeah.
Oh gosh, that's it's so little pieces of time here and there, but send out some text, talk some ideas, who knows, that probably you spend a good hour talking about ideas about where you go, and then go out and I try to do, sometimes it'll be a simpler post-ride cookout, but sometimes we'll put together, especially when we have some visitors in times like when Josh Mitchell comes into town and brings king salmon that he caught himself from the summer of fishing in Alaska. Although he handles all that, but you make sure that's a special night. Maybe do a little bit extra work in terms of prepping the ride, and more people will show up for the ride as far as that's concerned. So that might take a little bit more time. And sometimes it's a fairly simple planning thing, but I don't know, it's definitely.
There's been some times where people are getting home around sunup, and then they're back at work at 8 a.m.
Yeah, well, that's another piece of it is we like to night ride at, on the weekdays, of course. And, it's like we're not going out there and doing that to, show up at work at 9 or 10 o'clock, like work starts at 8. And actually, among the night ride crew, I would say I'm not Mr. Stickler that, you need to be at work at 8 o'clock. People drizzle in at 8:05, 8:10 all the time, but on night ride morning, it's like you get in at 8. It's just part of the deal, and
it's almost part of the you're going to ride hard all night, and then you're going to be in at work at 8 o'clock to work hard the next day.
Exactly. So it's part of it probably keeps us a little harder than normal, stuff like that too. So, but whatever, it's all at its root all about just having fun and enjoying life as hard as you possibly can. So, and it builds a lot. I mean, it bonds you too. Like there's again something about being at night, even in extreme weather, like the temperature will feel like
hot
low
teens,
20s or something. Probably teens when you get up high. And it'll be it's not like it's going to be like, oh my gosh, it's so cold, but it'll be uncomfortable, and there'll be some moments of cold. And we've gotten an out where we're up on mountains where snow and ice on everything just really slows things down. It really makes it for a long night. Get off the trail at 3 a.m. or something like that, and it's tough, and it bonds you. And probably the best way to be a human being, in my mind, is to have a lot of bonded relationships. And that's what creates them.
Oh, absolutely. Put yourself in tough situations and fun situations.
Yeah.
Both of those create good, solid bonds.
Yeah. And you do it an alternate time. You do it where it's, uncomfortable, a little tired. I think the worst part of the night rides, actually, usually we will take a lot of opportunity, as you well know, to get some trails that are a little way from town too. So like a 2-hour ride home at 2 a.m., whew, that's some sleep fighting days. Yep. I hate that stuff. But, again.
And every gas station on the way is closed, so you can't stop and get coffee.
Yeah. But, again, that's what makes it cool. And, the nights that are particularly cold or snowy or rainy, those are the ones you remember, and it bonds you. So
absolutely. All right, I want to end this off with a Clint story. You're probably one of the most smartest dudes I know, with a wealth of life experiences as well. So tell us about the time that you got arrested or almost arrested for possession of a stolen vehicle.
Yeah, that was a good one. I guess I was at least stopped at gunpoint. I guess never officially arrested, but yeah, we had a couple of white Ford pickup trucks as company cars, and I had one personally,
Mm-hmm.
and it was a company car. And one Christmas, I was actually picking up a trampoline for my kids, and I was using one of our big flatbed trucks. So I just left my truck in the parking lot for the evening. I came back later that night, and it was gone. So at any rate, our office manager reported the stolen truck the next day, but unfortunately reported one of our other white trucks.
So the wrong license plate number?
Yes. But then I started driving that other white Ford while I was waiting for the car to be stolen. Unfortunately, I've had another vehicle stolen. They tend to have they turn up in about a week, and with about 5,000 miles on it. I think they generally use them for drug runs. So I was fully expecting it to show back up, and I was driving the other truck, but I was driving up the interstate, and then I see one police behind me, then another, then another, then another. And I got pulled over, I believe, by about 5 police cars. They all streamed out, trained guns on us, had us come out of the car when my sister was with me, had us come out of the car one at a time and handcuffed. Well, actually, my sister and her boyfriend were handcuffed, and I was the last one to come out. So as I'm walking towards the police, I am asking, so what is this all about? I was pretty calm, and usually these things don't bother me too much. And he was like, this truck was reported stolen, and it immediately hit me what happened. And I started laughing, and I was like, oh my gosh, they must have reported the wrong vehicle. And so they believed me right away and didn't handcuff me, fortunately, but they held us for about an hour while they were verifying the story. It was a fun one. My sister had been in Europe for about 5 years at that point. I was in the knife business at that time, or a few years before that, so I was used to having crazy people walking in with guns, showing off their guns all the time. So it didn't really make me nervous, but my sister hadn't seen a gun in 5 years, so she was fairly freaked out.
Also while in handcuffs.
Yeah, exactly. Poor sister. But we all survived. It was pretty funny.
Right on. Well, dude, thanks a lot. I appreciate your time. And as always, I need to get back out with you guys.
Yeah.
Well, Clint is certainly a driven human being. I worked for him from 2008 to 2017, and I got to witness a lot of the transition from being a businessman to being the life of the party that he speaks about there in your interview.
Yep.
And, the growth of Industry 9 at that time, too. And I'm very happy to have that on my resume, and I'm glad to have been able to work for such a guy.
Yeah, and honestly, Drew, I didn't really think about that until, here in the past week, that you were my introduction to Clint and the I-9 crew. So, dude, thanks for, bringing me along to that crazy bunch of bike riders.
Heck yeah. Yeah, it's always cool to bring more like-minded people into the fold, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Now for the weather.
Yeah, so fall is here. We've definitely had some chillier temps the past couple of days, but it looks like it's warming up a little bit over the next week with highs up around, the upper 60s, low 70s, with the lows getting down to around like the low 50s and high 40s in some places. But no real rain on the schedule until next Thursday. So get out and enjoy these beautiful fall days while we've got them.
Yep. It's almost leaf surfing season.
I think it is up high already. Well, guys, that is a wrap on this week's episode. And as always, you can find us on social media. Just search Pisgah Podcast. And we've got the web store going with shirts and koozies. You can check that out at pisgahpodcast.bigcartel.com.
And if you ever set upon a career in the robotics industry, but you wound up making high engagement wheels instead, go ahead and click subscribe, share with your friends, and buy your friends a Listen to Pisgah t-shirt and or koozie.
Lights out for the wheelbarrows, huh?
Yeah, well,
Turn lights out on them.
yeah. It's time to go. It's time to go. Closing time.